We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! I'm Yuruzi. Here's part 11 of What If Naruto Studied Fuinjutsu. While exploring the Team 7 training ground, a young Naruto happens to stumble across a strangely shaped kunai embedded in a tree. Years of frustration and deciphering later, he finally cracks the Fuinjutsu formula hidden along the handle to surprising and painful results. At the same time, a ghost of the Otsutsuki sets in motion a plan to end his family's eternal conflict. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 44, The Finals, Prelude. Summoning Jutsu. Smoke exploded upward, rocketing past the lone observer's face. He couldn't help but smirk as he stared down into the chasm. Even in the dark, he recognized that massive shape anywhere. Not bad, kid, he whispered. Where the hell am I? Jiraiya. A guttural voice boomed, echoing off the rock walls. And that's my cue to leave, Jiraiya thought as he turned and began jogging into the woods. After he was about 50 yards into the tree line, he slowed down to a walk as he felt the massive creature slam onto the ground. Have fun, brat, he snickered as he began making his way to the village. He had little doubt the old toad would warm up to the abrasive brat, given time of course. After several minutes, he felt the shockwaves of the toad as he bounded off. Jiraiya could almost make out the faint screams of the blonde as he presumably held on for dear life. Jiraiya couldn't help but chuckle as he made a mental note to add a similar event to one of his future novels. His thoughts wandered back to the boy's progress. To be honest, they were practically done with everything he had set out for him. The boy had flown through the taijutsu training, and his only real difficulties had laid in the Rasengan, which was to be expected. Still, the boy almost had it down. He was sure the brat would at least be able to perform it in his own way in the week they had left together. Jiraiya's eyes hardened and he grew more somber as he trudged through the underbrush. 1 week left. If his sources were correct, the boy would have more than just a few aspiring genin to contend with. He hoped he was wrong, but he didn't get this far in his career by hoping his enemies would be lenient. 5 days until the finals. Neji took another deep breath as he sat meditating in the shade. Defeating Haruno shouldn't prove too difficult. Despite her impressive skill in genjutsu, without it, she should be of little challenge. Of course, she has had a month to prepare something else to counter my Byakugan, so that shall be my first objective. Neji exhaled as the images of his next possible opponents entered his mind. The genin from Kumo could definitely be a challenge. Based on his short actions from the preliminaries, it seems he is more taijutsu oriented. This works in my favor and will force him to draw close. Based on my experience with Lee, I am confident I will be able to keep up with him and disable his movements. He felt his brow twitch as the blonde entered his mind. And of course Uzumaki. His knowledge of Fuinjutsu makes him a very unpredictable opponent. Thankfully, I can keep track of his meddlesome seals with my Byakugan, but I am going to need to cautious when he draws close. Memories of the blonde's match with Lee flashed through his mind. In either case, speed is going to be imperative. Neji. I am warmed up, my rival. I am ready to begin whenever you are. Neji cracked open his eyes and stared across the field at Lee, who was bouncing on his toes with a smile stretching ear to ear. Neji nodded and grunted as he rose to his feet. As he made his way across the green, he rubbed at the weights attached to his wrists. I'll give Lee this, it's impressive that he manages to go about every day these infernal things on and perform as well as he does. Guy stood off to the side, and lightly smiled as he watched the two bow and slide into their respective stances. He had overjoyed when the normally reserved boy had come to him right after the preliminaries ended. He had just one request, help make him faster, which Guy was more than happy to do. They had set to work immediately. Day in and day out, Neji forced himself to take on more and more weight. The boy was already blisteringly swift, but now he was almost a blur. With only 5 days left until the exam, Guy had refused when Neji had requested to increase his weight yet again. For now, he just had to grow accustomed to the weight he had already worked with. Neji wasn't the only one who was improving. About a week after the preliminaries, Lee had finally been released from the hospital and had insisted on joining them. After his loss to Naruto, Lee had thrown himself back into his training with renewed vigor. He had rather vocally requested to double his current weight limit, and Guy had shed tears of joy at the boy's determination. It was a solid month of improvement for both of them. He watched the two collide and begin their daily sparring with a content smile. No matter the results of the finals, all of his students were chunin material in his eyes. Day before the finals. Okay. Here we go, Hinata sighed to herself as she made her way through the bustling streets of the village. After an agonizing month, tomorrow was the big day they'd all been preparing for. The day where she would see if all of her blood, sweat, and tears had been worth it. The day where she would represent the main house with everyone in the village watching her. No pressure. Honestly, she'd feel slightly better if she were allowed to hide behind her usual, bulky jacket, but her father had refused. Since she was representing the clan, he had required her to change her outfit. It was actually very comfortable and fit her well, but she still felt a bit awkward without the usual weight of her hoodie. Due to her status, she had been given a modified version of the Hyuga's combat jacket, similar to the one her cousin wore. Unlike him, she had the front of the jacket unbuckled and wore her navy training pants underneath. All in all, it made her lighter and faster, if a bit more exposed. She checked her basket one last time to make sure she had everything. As Kakashi had instructed, today was the day everyone was going to get back together again after their grueling training. Since she knew they were planning on discussing their plans for the upcoming matches, she had thought ahead to make everyone a lunch. Tomato salad for Sasuke, and, of course, ramen for Naruto, with a few more veggies than normal hidden within. He could be such a picky eater. Speaking of whom, as she turned the corner, she found none other than the blonde himself walking out of a store. He had changed his clothes since the last time she saw him. While she was a little disappointed to see he was no longer wearing the clothes she had given him, she had to admit he did look handsome. With a light blush, she began jogging up to him. Naruto-kun. Over here. He spun around and sent her one of his signature grins, as she ran up to him. Hey Hinata-chan. It's great to see you. He chuckled. As she finally stopped in front of him, he froze and squinted his eyes. Naruto-kun? What's wrong? She asked hesitatingly. Without a word, he placed a hand on his chin and began circling around her. Ah, Naruto-kun. She giggled as he went around and around almost like a curious puppy. Eventually he stopped and stood right in front of her, staring right at her face. She felt her blush returning as he stared directly deep into her eyes. She instinctually wanted to break eye contact, but fought as hard as she could to stand still. You changed your outfit, and your hair is longer, he noted as he slouched into a thinking pose. It is? She asked, genuinely surprised as she brushed a dangling thread out from her face. She truly hadn't noticed. She had just been so busy with her training that her hair had been rather low on her priority list. It's different, but it works for you. You look nice, he bluntly followed up with a smile. Oh, thank you. You don't look too bad yourself. Think so? Naruto asked as he pulled at his shirt. I didn't like it, but Iruka-sensei said I needed a new set of clothes. After all of the stress from Haku, bushy brows, and Erosenin's training, my old clothes were just too worn out. I had sewn them back together so many times there was barely any of the original thread left. What do you think? I don't look too much like Kakashi-sensei, do I? Indeed, he almost did. Naruto had exchanged his navy hoodie for the standard navy uniform most chunin and jounin wore. All he was missing was the flak jacket, though that could change within the next 24 hours. She giggled and replied, all you're missing are the jacket and mask. He chuckled and began rolling up his sleeves as he began to grow a little hot. As Hinata watched him, she grew alarmed as she noticed the red-stained bandages wrapped around his hands. What have you done now? She asked, setting down her basket and yanking his hands towards her. He tried to protest, but she quickly shushed him and unwound his bandages. She felt her heart soften as she inspected the eviscerated state of his hands. She quickly ran through a few hand seals, causing her hands to glow green. She carefully took his palm into her hands as she began healing the scar damage. What were you doing this time? She fussed as the scars began to fade away. He nervously chuckled and rubbed the back of his head with his free hand. Hee. Sorry Hinata-chan, but I can't tell ya. It's a surprise for tomorrow. A surprise? She asked as she finished the first hand, and began to work on the other. Oh yeah. Trust me, it's going to knock everyone in the stadium flat on their face. Just you wait. Even Sasuke team is going to be left speechless. She wanted to pry more, but she could tell by that look in his eye that he wouldn't budge. She huffed and finished up her work, before carefully inspecting his hands. She ran a finger along his palm to make sure there was no lingering scar tissue, and she was happy to see most of the traces gone. "Alright, that should do it," she sighed, taking a step back. Naruto flexed his hands and gave her a smile. "You're just getting better at that with every day. I can't wait to see what you and your dad cooked up for tomorrow. If this is how far your med stuff has come, I'm almost scared to see what else you've learned." She chuckled as she turned around to pick up her basket. Naruto finally noticed her little package, and instantly went star-eyed by the sight. Oh, what's that? Lunch?" he asked, licking his lips and sniffing the air. "Yes, and it's for when we meet with Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke-kun," she chided as she held the basket away from his reach. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's not keep them waiting," he exclaimed as he grabbed her hand and began leading her through the crowd of people. After a month apart, almost nothing had changed. Everything quickly fell back into place. He would rabble on a mile a minute, while she would laugh at his bad jokes and lightly chastise him when he bragged a little too much. Every now and again, the topic of their training would be brought up and they both would have to force themselves from not revealing anything. While they were very excited to share everything they had been through, there was still the possibility the two could face each other in the final match. After about 35 minutes of walking, the distant meadow of Training Ground 7 came into view, and they spied the familiar form of their sensei lazily reading his book in the shade of the trees. "Kakashi-sensei!" The both shouted as they jogged towards him. He looked up from his book, and sent them both an one-eyed smile and a wave as they drew closer. "It's great to see you, Kakashi-sensei," Hinata smiled as she reached him, and gave him a tiny bow. "Why, thank you, Hinata. It's lovely to see you too." "You as well, Naruto," he replied as he eyed the blonde who was gazing around the clearing. "Where's Sasuke?" he asked as he glanced back at Kakashi. "He had to run an errand," Kakashi replied with a shrug. "He said he had to deliver something and it had to be today. Don't worry, he's as grouchy as usual. He left about 20 minutes ago, so he should be back relatively soon." The two laughed as they settled down next to their teacher. "So, how was the desert?" Naruto asked as he leaned a little too close to Kakashi. "What makes you think we were in the desert?" Kakashi replied as he pushed the blonde's face away with his book. "There's still sand in your hair," Naruto replied, pointing at the man's spiky head. "Still?" The man groaned as he gave his head another scratch. "I thought I had gotten rid of all of it after that last shower." "So you were there?" "Huh." Naruto giggled. "How was it, sensei?" Hinata chimed in. "Hot." "And that's about all you're going to get out of me," he sighed as he settled back against the tree. "Ah, sensei, you're no fun. Come on. What were you and Sasuke up to?" Naruto whined as he leaned in towards Kakashi's face again. "Well, I guess I can tell you this." "Come closer," Kakashi whispered as Naruto leaned in on the balls of his feet. "Stop being nosy," he droned as he flicked Naruto in the nose, setting him off balance. Naruto yelped as he lightly fell back, causing Hinata to giggle at the pair's antics. Naruto sent him a glare, before sighing and rolling fully onto his back. He let out a deep sigh as he enjoyed the warm rays of the sun bounce across his face. He had missed this. Just spending time with them. They'd been apart for only a short amount of time, but he was surprised how much he had longed to get back to this routine. As he opened his eyes, he was surprised to see someone standing above him. "Not gonna doze off, are you?" Sasuke smirked. Naruto yelped and jumped behind Hinata at Sasuke's sudden appearance. Sasuke smirked and continued, "Humph. I guess not." "Shut the hell up." Naruto cried, pointing a finger over Hinata's shoulder. "It's great to see you again, Sasuke-kun," Hinata calmly greeted him. "You too." "Dig the hair," Sasuke said, nodding towards her before looking Naruto up and down. "And you, almost look like an actual shinobi for once." Naruto placed a hand over his mouth to stifle a giggle. "At least one of us does." "What is up with that leotard and hair?" Sasuke grit his teeth as he brushed a strand out of his eyes. His hair hadn't exactly been the focus of his time. When this whole event was over he was planning on getting a haircut, but for now, he didn't have the time. "The suit is aerodynamic. Not all of us are as naturally fast as you," he rebuffed as he placed a hand on his hip, "or as thick-head. Why you?" "Okay. I think that's enough," Kakashi cut in as he picked himself up from the ground. "Geez. It's barely been 2 minutes and you're already at each other's necks." He sighed as he cracked the kink in his neck. Alright. Fall in. As if someone had flipped a switch, all three genin locked up and formed a straight line without another word. Kakashi was silent as he gazed over the three of them. Now then. We're finally here. When you stand on that field tomorrow, I want you to remember that you earned your place there. It wasn't luck. It was both your skill and drive that allowed you to be there. Don't forget, you haven't just been preparing for this for the past month. This is what we have been striving for ever since our first mission outside the village. You guys have been pushed harder than any of the other teams out there, and I want you to prove it by leaving them in the dust. He gazed down the row and made sure to make eye contact with each of them. Now, some of you are going to have some difficult matches ahead of you. While I'm truly confident that each of you will be able to overcome them, do not get caught up worrying about losing. Remember, even failure is an option here. Anyone who has made it this far is eligible for promotion, no matter the results of the match. Kakashi paused as he crossed his arms. I don't hope that you all will pass, I expect it, and so does the Hokage. You three are going to enter that arena as genin, and I'll be waiting to see all three of you leaving with a green jacket in hand. Am I clear? Yes, sir. They shouted in unison. Kakashi tried his best to hide his smile, but he couldn't help it. Teaching did have its merits, and it was moments like this that made it worth it. Now, he exclaimed as he clapped his hands, with all that motivational nonsense out of the way, I think you all have deserved a day to decompress. Today, we'll just sit, relax, and discuss what we can about our plans. You boys can thank Hinata for bringing you something to eat. Finally. Naruto exclaimed as he bounced on his feet as Kakashi and Hinata sat down and began passing around the food. Across Konoha, Team 7 weren't the only ones enjoying lunch. As they sat at a tiny cafe, Ko could not help but roll his eyes at the antics of his teammate. Jay, will you please stop harassing those poor girls? I honestly don't think you've ever been taught that it's impolite to stare. They don't seem to mind it, he chuckled as he winked at the blonde sitting 2 tables away from them. He grinned as one sent him a kiss back, before he tumbled forward after a tap to the back of the head. Eyes front, Jay, the dark-skinned man grunted as he sat down beside him. Got it, sensei, he grumbled as he leaned back in his chair once again. Now, tomorrow is the big day. So I expect everyone to be paying attention and doing their jobs. Am I understood? Yes sir, Ko and EHL responded at once, while Jay murmured, got it. Their sensei sent him a disapproving glare as the boy returned his gaze back at the other tables. He quickly reached his foot out and swiped out the legs of the boy's chair. He yelped as he fell back, causing the 2 girls to burst out laughing. Jay sent the man a light scowl as he got back up and sat back in his chair. Hardy har. Yeah. I know what to do, but why do I have to anyways? EHL's going to be the one taking first crack at him anyways, plus he'll probably knock him out while he's at it. It is always important to have a backup plan. If EHL loses, it will be up to you to keep a close eye on the objective. Got it, Jay droned and gave a thumbs up, before sighing and leaning back with his hands behind his head. It wasn't like it was too hard to identify the guy. The village practically screamed it at us through their behavior. In any case, we are here to make sure. If we're right, it will confirm the Raikage suspicions, the Jounin whispered before he took a sip of his drink. He gazed upon his participating students and sighed. While I know this is a mission, don't forget to enjoy yourselves a bit out there. Good luck to you both, he shrugged as he raised his drink in a toast. And may the best man win, Jay winked at EHL, who rolled his eyes, before clanging his glass in the circle. And then the old pervert kicked me into a damn canyon. Naruto shouted as he waved his chopsticks around, much to the amusement of his team. Well, it certainly sounds like you had a fun time, Sasuke smirked as he took another bite of his salad. That's one way of putting it, Naruto grumbled as he leaned back and stretched out across the blanket. So, what about you, team? What were you and Sensei doing? Kakashi and Sasuke seemed to share a glance, before Sasuke actually smiled. Well, we certainly put your gift to good use. Besides that, well, he took another bite before turning to him and saying, you'll just have to wait and see. Ah, come on, Naruto whined, causing Kakashi and Hinata to chuckle, can't you tell us anything? Sasuke shook his head, as he said, just wait and you'll see it tomorrow. It's a secret. Sasuke was surprised when Naruto simply froze and slowly lowered his chopsticks from his mouth. He remained uncharacteristically still as he stared off into the distance. Hinata grew worried and tugged at his shirt. Naruto-kun. Are you alright? Naruto seemed to flinch and weakly chuckle as he rubbed the back of his head. Hee. Sorry guys. Kind of zoned out there. Is everything alright? Kakashi asked as he eyed Naruto. Ha. Oh yeah. I'm fine. Just thinking about something. I'm good. So, Hinata-chan. How was training with your dad? Oh, well it was rather interesting really, she began as she began discussing her time with her father. As she continued, Kakashi only paid partial attention as he watched Naruto. Something Sasuke said had clearly bothered him. Sometimes he wished he were a Yamanaka just so he could tell what was going on in people's heads. While he listened to Hinata recall her training, Naruto's mind could not help but drift to his conversation several days earlier. Even as he tried to shove the words out of his mind, the Kyuubi's voice echoed off the walls of his mind. As I recall, the Uchiha was the only one who refrained from sharing anything that night you treasure so much. He still hasn't shared why his is unable to let go of the past. As for the Hyuga, well, she holds secrets even she is unaware of. The next day. Hurry up Hanabi. We're going to miss the first match at your pace. And I said hold on a moment, Konohamaru. You almost made me drop the popcorn. Hanabi shouted as she bustled behind him. The pair ran through the crowd of people, heading towards the VIP section. Nobles, clan heads, and dignitaries alike were granted access to the luxurious levels of the stadium. As she glanced at a pair of children running past her, Ria began to feel a little out of place. Well, more than a little. Most of the people surrounding her had homes that were nearly 20 times the size of her apartment. Sure, the decorum was grand, but she was having a hard time truly appreciating it, as she tried to keep up with her brother who was storming ahead through the crowd of VIPs. Wow! Tai whispered as he came out of the walkway and gazed out over the massive arena. This is so awesome! He exclaimed as he began walking down the aisle to his right. While his eyes combed over the trees and grass, he failed to pay attention to where he was heading, and fell flat on his rump after colliding straight into the back of a man's legs. Oops! Sorry sir, he blushed as he rubbed the back of his head. Oh, that's quite alright, the man smiled as he offered his hand to lift the boy up. I'm terribly sorry, sir. He just got away from me, Ria apologized as she ran up behind them and grabbed her brother's hand. It's fine. No harm no foul. I can tell the boy's just excited is all, the man said as he waved her off. She gave him a grateful smile as she began leading the two of them towards their seats. Hey Yoshio! Over here! A voice called off to his left. The man turned and smiled as he caught sight of his friend. Inoichi! Glad I finally found you. He made his way down the aisle until he was finally next to the blonde man and the woman sitting next to him. And I take it you are Nariko Yamanaka? It is a pleasure to finally meet you, he smiled as he shook hands with the lady. Indeed. It is a pleasure to finally meet you as well. Splendid. Where's Ino? I thought she'd be sitting with you, Yoshio asked as the three of them settled into their chairs. Oh, she didn't want to sit with her lame parents. She's off with her friends and sensei. Yoshio nodded and began gazing around the stadium. He had to give Konoha credit. The place certainly was impressive. As he looked around, he finally spied the Kage's box 3 windows blocks down from them. He could just barely make out the signature shape of their hats as the two Kages shook hands. Welcome to Konoha, Kazekage. I hope your travel here was uneventful. Thankfully it was. I must say, the weather in the Land of Fire made the trip quite enjoyable, the Kazekage replied in his gruff voice. 10 minutes after the two settled into their seats, Kitsune shined into the room and took his place beside the Hokage. The ANBU are in place and ready to take action if necessary, he leaned in and whispered, they will move at the slightest sign of trouble. The Hokage nodded and folded his hands as he gazed down at the arena. No trouble I hope, the Kazekage asked. None at all, the Sandai smiled, I was just informed that we are all set to go. We should be ready to begin shortly. Hey Chuji, can you pass what the hell man? Kiba exclaimed as he snatched the bag of popcorn away from the Akimichi. Dude! You've eaten almost the entire bag. Come on, he complained as Akamaru barked at the large boy. Sorry Kiba. You know I just get so hungry. Here, want some chocolate? Chuji offered as he lifted a box out of his bag of snacks. Fine, I guess. Thanks, Kiba sighed as he took the box. You know since you ate it all, you're going to have to go get some more in between the fights, Ino said as she glared at Chuji. You're going to trust him with the food? He's just going to eat it all again. Kiba exclaimed. Hey, I wouldn't eat all of it. Well, not most of it, anyway, Chuji chuckled, before wincing under Ino's gaze. Pardon me. They turned their heads to see a dark-skinned boy with crutches standing at the end of their aisle. Hey, I remember you from the Chunin exams. You were from Kumo, right? Kiba asked. Indeed, he replied with a boy as he bowed. My name is Ko. It is pleasant to meet you again. I was wondering if I could join you. I would rather sit with people I can actually discuss the matches with. Civilians will be just too troublesome to stand if I have to explain every little thing. Sure thing. Papa Squat, Chojia exclaimed through a mouthful of food. Much appreciated, the boy replied as he made his way towards them. How is your leg doing? Ino asked as the boy settled into his chair, next to Chuji. Better. I don't know if you all heard, but I had a rather nasty run-in with a porcupine during the second exam. I don't know what kind of creatures you're keeping in that forest, but let's just say the process of removing barbed needles was not a pleasant one. Everyone flinched as they tried to suppress that gruesome image. Geez. That really sucks, Kiba whistled. More than you can imagine, Ko weakly chuckled. Well, I hope you get better so. Look. There they are. Ino cut him off as she pointed at the entrance of the field. The whole stadium roared in applause as the 12 competitors made their way to the center of the field. Hinata smiled as she watched Naruto soak it all in. To say the least, he was taking the applause in stride. He couldn't help but giggle as he waved at the legions of people all shouting in support. It wasn't every day that his arrival was met with showering applause. As she gazed throughout the crowd, she scanned the VIP section and easily found her father sitting with the elders of her clan. Today, she was going to prove herself to all of them. Not just to show them that they were wrong about her, but to prove it to herself. Alright. If I may have everyone's attention, Genma called out, as the applause from the crowd began to die down. Good. I'd like to welcome everyone to the final round of the Chunin examinations. Now, like the preliminaries, same rules apply. While killing and maiming are not against the rules, they are highly frowned upon and will be taken into consideration towards your promotion. If, at any time, I deem that you are unable to continue, the match will be decided immediately. Let me make myself clear, when I say it's over, it's over. Got it? He seemed to linger his gaze on Gaara longer than the others, before he continued. Alright. Now, the same lineups still apply. First up, Naruto Uzumaki and EHL Honda. The rest of you, please make your way towards the observation balcony. Thank you. Do your best, Naruto-kun. Hinata smiled as the rest of the contestants made their way across the field. Hey Dobe, Sasuke whispered as he caught Naruto's shoulder. I want to fight you in the final match. So don't you dare lose here. Naruto smiled as he watched his two teammates make their way behind the others. With a deep breath, he turned to face the white-haired boy standing across the field. He watched as the boy had a few short words with his teammate before he jogged after Sasuke and Hinata. Naruto flashed him a grin, as he settled into his stance. And here we go. If both contestants are ready. Then let the tournament begin, Genma said, lowering his hand. Barely half a second later, the sound of a loud thwack echoed across the walls of the arena, followed by a deep gasp from the audience. The finals had officially begun. Chapter 45, The Finals, Part 1. If both contestants are ready, then let the tournament begin, Genma shouted with a wave of his hand. There was a bright flash, and barely half a second later, the sound of a loud thwack echoed across the walls of the arena. A unanimous gasp erupted throughout the audience, who were taken back by the boy's incredible speed. In the arena, EHL was just as surprised as they were. Unlike his opponent in the preliminaries, who had been sent flying back, Naruto stood upright with his arms crossed in front of his face. He was barely moved 5 feet, EHL thought, glaring at the blonde. Oh well, Naruto coyly smirked as he lowered his arms and rushed the boy. EHL was quick to recover, and easily blocked the incoming blows. As they traded hits, Naruto was pleased to discover the boy moving at a considerably slower pace. EHL ducked under Naruto's latest swing and bent low to the ground. His eyes narrowed as a spark of electricity danced across his skin. He bent his knees and pushed off as hard as he could. In the blink of an eye, his fist launched forward faster than Naruto could see and slammed into his stomach, only to clang off once again. It did seem to have more of an effect this time. Naruto grunted as he was propelled back several feet and slid across the grass. As he flew, he reached into his pouch and launched a barrage of kunai at his opponent. EHL easily dodged out of the way, and jumped back as he noticed a tag attached to one of the handles. The explosion went off, kicking up mounds of dirt in its path. EHL rode the wave of the force as he backflipped through the air and slid to a halt. As he came to a stop, he spied Naruto through the smoke as he quickly lifted up his sleeve and seemed to tear something off his skin. Naruto winced as he watched the tag burn away into dust, but quickly slapped another tag onto his wrist. Density seals working like a charm, so far, Naruto thought to himself as he glanced back at his opponent. While it had served its intended purpose, he had hoped it would have lasted a little longer. Density seals were just too unstable to last over an extended period of time. Well, 1 down, 6 to go, Naruto muttered as he slid back into his stance. EHL was silent as he studied the blonde boy before him. After a minute, he lightly smiled and started to slouch. Not too bad. Not many people have been able to stop my attack right off the bat, but I have to wonder. How many density seals do you have left? Naruto shot him a surprised look. He had never pegged the guy as the Fuinjutsu type. You know Fuinjutsu? I have some experience, but nothing near your level, EHL replied as he straightened his back. Naruto's body tensed as electricity began sparking across the EHL's skin. However, if that's how you want to play it, fine. Long range it is, EHL coldly stated as he quickly began racing through seals faster than Naruto could keep track of. Strands of electricity cascaded off his body as a loud humming sound began filling the stadium. Naruto began funneling chakra into his legs as the other boy slowly began raising his hands. EHL's eyes shot open and he snapped his fingers. Instantly, arcs of lighting raced out of his arm toward the blonde. Naruto yelped and pushed as much chakra into his jump as he could as he dove off to the side. As he rolled on the ground and began getting up, he heard another snap, and quickly bent backwards as a bolt soared over his head. EHL was not giving him any breathing room. One after another, he sent stream after stream of lightning rocketing towards his opponent. It was honestly all Naruto could do to weave in between the stream of white light. EHL narrowed his eyes and crossed his arms in an X. He slashed outward and snapped, sending a giant X-shaped bolt of lighting towards his opponent. Naruto landed on his feet and quickly ducked to the ground, avoiding the attack through the empty space at the bottom. As it soared over his head, his eyes widened as EHL appeared right in front of his face. In the split second he had, his mind practically shouted, "Activate," as the punch connected with his chest. Although the seal's effect absorbed most of the impact, he was still sent flying backwards across the field. He slammed into the arena wall, causing a massive crack along the stone. He grunted as he pushed himself out from the wall. The blow may not have damaged his body, but that didn't mean he didn't feel it. He had realized the biggest problem fighting EHL wasn't going to be keeping up with his speed, but rather withstanding his blows. During the preliminaries, it hadn't been the punch that knocked out the waterfall shinobi, but the concussion from his impact against the wall. He had realized that if he was going to be able to last in a prolonged fight, his body was going to need to be able to handle the punishment. EHL let out a heavy breath as he leaned on his knees. 1, 2, 3, he muttered under his breath. Naruto hastily ripped off the tag and slapped on another one, as he spied EHL getting back up. His eyes widened as EHL started to lean forward, and he quickly leapt out of the way as EHL sped past him and slammed his fist into the wall. EHL backhand swung at him with his other fist, while he tore his fist from the wall. Naruto leapt back, and began backpedaling up the wall as EHL chased after him. The audience let out an excited murmur as the two genin took their fight vertically along the walls of the arena. Naruto bobbed and weaved, dancing backwards along the wall with EHL quickly behind him. Naruto's eyes flashed as EHL overextended one of his punches. He focused chakra to his palm as he reached out to tap EHL's forearm. "Let's see you move that fast now," he confidently thought as he prepared to apply a gravity seal. Just before he made contact with EHL's arm, Naruto yelped and reflexively yanked his arm back, as a spark jumped up and shocked him. He glanced up at EHL, who gave him the tiniest of smirks before continuing his assault. Okay. Maybe Neji wasn't the biggest priority, he sweat as he blocked a rather painful kick to his side. His breath hitched as he saw sparks dancing across his cocked fist. He leaned backwards as EHL snapped, and lighting raced right across the tip of his face. "This guy's intense. I barely have time to think, let alone do anything," he winced as he glanced back at his opponent. Naruto paused as he caught sight of his face. He hadn't noticed it before, but, while EHL's scarf was blowing in the wind, he was able to glimpse seemingly muttering under his breath. A second later, EHL's eyes narrowed, and Naruto's instincts kicked in again. He barely activated his seal in time before EHL's fist slammed into him, sending him flying back against the wall. Naruto bounced against the concrete before rolling along the curvature of the as he slid towards the ground. EHL's momentum carried him along his trajectory, causing him to slide against the wall past his opponent. Naruto stumbled to his feet as he tried to regain his orientation. Though slightly dazed, he ripped off the seal and slapped another one on. For left, he thought as he grit his teeth. He pulled a twig from his hair as he watched EHL leap off the wall and roll onto the ground. Great! This is bushy brows all over again, except now I can't even place a seal on him, he grumbled to himself. As EHL stood back up, Naruto paused as he noticed something. He was doing it again. He watched in fascination, as EHL seemed to be bobbing his head, almost as if he was. His eyes widened as it finally came to him. He's counting something. He must have a cool-down period in between his bursts of speed. It wasn't much, but it was something and he could definitely work with that. EHL paused as he noticed a grin begin to spread across the blonde's face. He had seen that same look, when the boy had trapped the other genin inside that cube. He stood his ground as the blonde raised his hands in a familiar hand sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He screamed as a fourth of the arena went up in white smoke. The civilians in the audience let out a mixture of excited gasps and groans as the field suddenly became swarmed with a mob of the local troublemaker. I can't let the original disappear, EHL thought as he quickly shot off another chain of lightning. Naruto stood his ground and smiled as random clones around the arena slammed their hands to the ground. EHL watched in surprise as just before his attack hit the blonde, it took a 90-degree turn and shot off towards the crowd of clones. The lightning slammed into the ground at one of the clones' feet, revealing a glowing white symbol as it disappeared. I was wondering when you were going to break those out, Kakashi thought as he leaned forward in his seat. So far the boy had only been on the defense, he was interested to see what he would do now that he had room to breathe. Let's see what creative idea you'll have this time. You like it? Naruto called across the field, I'm proud to introduce you to one of my early inventions, the lightning rod seal. Guaranteed to redirect any projectile Raitun jutsu. EHL smirked as he watched the seal fade from white to black. The kid was clever, he'd give him that. Well played, but do you have anything else new? Or are you simply going to hide behind your horde of clones like before? Naruto gave him a shrug. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know I played this speed game before with bushy brows, but, unlike you, he was much faster and EHL raised an eyebrow as Naruto pointed a finger at him. He didn't have to take a break between each attack, he finished with a smirk. EHL went silent for a few seconds before lightly chuckling. You are more observant than people believe. If I may ask, what gave it away? Tiny movements here and there. You would nod your head, plus sometimes you muttered it under your breath. EHL seemed uncharacteristically embarrassed as he rubbed his head. Sensei was right. I slipped up while I wasn't focused. I also noticed you can only move that fast in a straight line. Naruto smirked as he substituted with another clone somewhere in the mass. Which makes you predictable, the clones shouted in unison. EHL fell silent as he gazed around the circle of clones. He was in exactly the same situation Lee was in during the preliminaries. A prolonged fight would be disastrous. The longer it took, the more opportunities the blonde would have to slip past his guard and place a gravity seal. Focusing on exterminating all the clones wasn't exactly an option either. If the Reikage was right about him, the blonde had chakra to spare and could simply replenish the horde without losing a sweat. Well then, Sensei said he wanted the boy tested. Let's take things up a notch, he smirked as he began unraveling his scarf, drawing confusion from the blonde. You are amusing, Naruto Uzumaki. Very amusing, he said as he began unbuckling his jacket revealing a sleeveless undershirt. As he dropped it to the ground, Naruto narrowed his eyes as he examined the dark tattoos etched across EHL's shoulder. Let's have some real fun. What is that, sensei? Ino asked as she stared at the intricate pattern. That is one of the Reikage's inheritance seals, Asuma replied as he took another puff of his cigarette. That kid must be something else. What's so special about them? Kiba turned around to ask. Well, as you may know from Naruto, Fuinjutsu is a very intricate field of study. The possibilities are almost limitless, but it requires an intensive amount of time and knowledge to accomplish even the most menial of tasks. While the Yondaime is rightfully considered one of the greatest Fuinjutsu users the world has seen, Konoha has little else to brag about in that department. As of right now, Kumo is without a doubt the most adept nation in the art. Due to sitting out of the last few wars, they have had plenty of time to explore the various fields without interruption. Their work in Fuinjutsu is astonishing, Kakashi replied as he sat forward, gazing at EHL clap his hands together. He turned his eye down at the genin below him and continued. The past Raikage have taken a particular interest in Fuinjutsu and have created special seals that are only granted to those they deem worthy, such as the infamous Black Lightning Mark. I can only think of one person with that tattoo, but regarding this one, I don't recognize it, he finished as his eye shifted to Ko. Your thoughts? He asked. That is the Raigake's generator seal, Ko spoke, drawing everyone's attention. My teammate was raised as an orphan, and had plenty of time to wander the city as a child. From what I've been told, one day he snuck onto the Raikage's property and spied on him and his brother as they trained. For years, he watched and he learned, but his biggest focus was attempting to copy the technique that grants the Raikage his renowned speed. One day, as the Raikage was touring our academy, he stopped to observe a sparring session and discovered what EHL had been trying to accomplish. When questioned by the man, EHL was forced to reveal everything. Instead of punishing him, he was commended for his talent. Of course, EHL can't use the complete version of the technique. As your friend pointed out, he can only do it in short bursts due to the amount of chakra it requires, which is why, he smiled, turning to face them, the Raikage gave him a tool to surpass that limitation. Naruto's eyes widened as he recognized the Fuinjutsu patterns along the tattoo. The clones grew tense as the seal began glowing white and a loud hum began filling the air. The hairs on their arms began to rise as lighting began sparking off his body in every direction. EHL's eyes were glowing blue as a layer of chakra settled over his body. He cracked his neck and glared into the horde of clones. In the blink of an eye, he was gone, followed by several loud pops as he began dismantling the clones one by one. This really is bushy brows all over again, Naruto sweat as he danced around the crowd of clones, observing the chaos. From this far away he could actually see EHL now. Much to his displeasure, the boy was no longer limited to just straight paths. His movements were controlled and flowing, branching from strike to strike like a bolt of lightning in slow motion. He gulped as EHL turned his eyes on him. Naruto jumped backwards as he came rocketing towards him. As he leapt forward, a clone came in from the side and tackled EHL to the ground. It closed its eyes as red symbols began glowing all over his skin. Naruto substituted away as the explosion rocked the ears of the audience. He substituted again with one of his clones hiding in the trees and squatted down, while he watched EHL stand up from the crater. Aside from a scorched shirt, he seemed relatively unharmed. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he observed EHL tackle the clones once again. His chakra is acting like a cloak. Not only is it granting him his speed, but it's also protecting him from external attacks, he thought as he watched another explosive tag go off without any effect. Well, he couldn't hide forever. He needed a plan. He toyed with the idea of dismantling the seal on EHL's shoulder, but he tossed it away. That would require getting close and having enough time to carefully examine it. He also didn't like the idea of simply trapping him the same way he had Lee. Naruto might have been a shinobi, but he was a showman at heart. He loved to show off flashy new techniques and ideas to garner attention. Simply repeating the same trick didn't hold much appeal for him. Plus he'll be expecting it, he thought as he bit at his thumb. Oh, what to do? What to do? He grimaced as the image of Ero Sennin popped into his mind. He could almost hear the faint "I told you so" now. He shook his head and started focusing simply on how EHL moved. The way is kicked off the ground from each attack before barreling toward the next. As he watched, he was again reminded of Lee. A ghost-like vision of the green-clad boy seemed to layer over EHL as he raced across the field. It was just something about the way they kicked off that was so similar. They would crouch down and push off as hard as they could, before jettisoning away. He watched as the final group of clones tried to chase EHL towards the wall of the arena. EHL dodged as kunai rained down on him, and ran up the concrete before jettisoning towards the small group. As EHL bent his knees to kick off the wall, something just clicked in Naruto's head as a new plan started forming together. Thanks bushy brows, he thought, crossing his fingers. As the final clone popped up in smoke, EHL took the moment to gaze around the arena for the original. Stopping as he glared at the trees, he brought up his hands and snapped as a bolt of lighting rocketed towards the branches. Halfway along its path, it arched and raced towards the center and slammed into the blonde's lightning rod seal. He sighed before drawing more chakra from his seal. The blonde's lightning rod was certainly beneficial for him, however, if they functioned the way he thought, it had one fatal flaw. His seals may redirect all of his attacks, but they had to store all that energy somewhere, just like a battery. And like any battery, he thought as he raised up his arms, it can only hold so much. He snapped several times, sending out streams larger than any he had released today. They shot into the sky, before inevitably curving and slamming into the multiple seals placed around the field. He maintained the connection of the beams as he pumped more and more chakra into the jutsus. Naruto's seals began to grow brighter and brighter, as they tried to absorb as much of the energy as they could. Eventually, they just couldn't handle the pressure anymore, and one by one, began exploding all around the field. EHL nodded as he cut off the beams connected to his chakra cloak. He turned his eyes to the closest tree and fired off a blast of lightning, setting the tree ablaze. One down, Uzumaki. You can't hide forever, he called as he snapped again, blasting the bark apart in a shower of splinters. He's getting ready to move, Hinata whispered as she stared at the rich, blue outline of her teammate through her Byakugan. He's going to have to, Sasuke whispered back, his Sharingan soaking in every detail, his trees after this next one. What's he doing anyway? He's summoned some clones with him, and it looks like he's forming chakra in his hand for something, she replied as she zoomed in. Let's see what you got, Dobe, Sasuke thought as he leaned against the railing. EHL settled his eyes on the fifth tree down the line. Without a word, he raised his hand and fired off another shot. No sooner had the lightning left his fingers, two shuriken shot out of the tree in wide arcs. The attack split down the middle as it was drawn to the two seals placed on the metal's surface. EHL paused as 7 Narutos burst from the tree and began charging towards him at a blistering speed. He's gotten even faster, Sasuke remarked as he watched 2 clones split off from the group and begin racing along the walls. Lightning crackled along his skin as EHL fired off 2 shots towards the clones, on the wall, only to growl as they twisted away towards the seals placed on the shurikens. Turning his attention back to the others, he was surprised to find the clones already upon him. One somersaulted over his head and quickly summoned another clone, before EHL dispelled him with a blast point blank. As he prepared to attack the retreating form of the clone, he cried in pain as he fell backward. The original Naruto slide kicked his legs from behind, knocking him on his back, before spinning around and racing through seals. Katan, Fox Hellfire! He shouted as he let out a raging torrent of yellow flames. EHL winced as the fire descended upon his chakra coat, forcing him back onto the ground. His layer of chakra protected him from any major harm, but he was still forced back by the jutsu's immense heat. Every time EHL tried to rise to his feet, Naruto would stand directly above him and forced him down with another blast of fire. As he dealt with EHL, his clones arrived at their positions and began racing through hand signs. That's enough! EHL shouted as he slammed his fist against the ground. The ground around him cracked under the force, sending Naruto off balance. EHL took the momentary reprieve to jump away from the blonde's assault. What are you up to, Uzumaki? He growled as he stumbled to his feet, wincing at his tender chest. Surprise! Naruto smiled as he clapped his hands together and slammed his palms to the ground. At the same time, all of his clones around the arena copied his same movement. EHL was caught off guard as he began rising into the air. His eyes darted in every direction as a cubic, pink barrier began spanning the radius of the arena. He glanced back and forth between the clones creating the barrier, and his eyes shot up as he heard a soft clang. He gazed up to see a clone land on the roof of the barrier. It knelt down and placed its hands on the pink surface, as another clone attached itself to the bottom. What is Naruto up to? Is going to do that fire trick again? Ino asked, sitting on the edge of her seat. Not unless he wants to barbecue himself as well, Chuji pointed out as he raced through another pack of chips. Indeed, Kakashi thought as he raised his headband over his left eye, revealing the 3 tomos of the Sharingan. Naruto isn't the type to pull the same trick twice. Besides, I nailed that into them during week 6. What have you come up with now? EHL quietly eyed the barrier as Naruto stood up and gave him a smile. Alright. He screamed as he stretched his arms. I think we've been playing by your rules long enough. Now it's my turn. Let's go. With that, he began racing towards him at a breakneck speed. EHL settled into his taijutsu stance, content to let Naruto come to him. When he was 10 feet away, the Naruto on the roof smirked and twisted his hand to the right. Naruto smirked as he ran and jumped into the air. EHL prepared to block him, when the strangest feeling rushed over him. Suddenly, his world turned upside down as he was suddenly racing upwards into the air. He grunted as Naruto slammed a kick into him in midair, sending him flying in an arc. Naruto twisted and landed on his feet as EHL slammed against the roof of the cube. The audience gasped in excitement as the two stood upside down against the roof of the barrier. As EHL struggled to his feet, Naruto leapt off the roof and landed against the side of the cube. He attached his chakra to the wall as he gazed up at EHL, who had finally managed to stand up. He smirked and wiggled his finger to come and get him. EHL glared at him as he bent down to kick off the roof, his electric cloak flaring. Just as he prepared to jump off, the clone on the wall opposite of Naruto twisted his hand to the right. EHL pushed off the wall and raced towards Naruto. He got about halfway across the cube, before slowing down and racing towards the opposite wall. He slammed against the pink barrier and cried out as he bounced against the surface. He struggled against the immense force as he tried to crawl to his feet, and froze as a kunai landed a foot away from his face. He covered his head as heard the sizzle, but could do nothing as the tag went off, sending him rolling away. Naruto smirked as he nodded at the clone under the bottom of the cube. It nodded and twisted his hand, causing EHL to fall from the right wall towards the ground. EHL slid against the wall, forcing his chakra to stick as he slowed to a stop. He panted as he glared at Naruto across the field. The blonde simply smiled and waved at him. Lightning sparked across EHL's face, as he launched himself off the wall. "What's he doing?" "I don't get it," Kiba asked as he watched EHL chase after Naruto around the cube. "I mean, that thing is cool and all, but what is it accomplishing?" "Gravity seals," Kurinai replied, so entranced with the match that she had momentarily forgotten about the disgusting smell of Asuma's cigarette. "Naruto is changing the center of gravity between each face of the wall. Every time EHL moves, Naruto makes sure he's attached to a wall before changing the gravity. By doing this, he not only just slapping EHL around, he's keeping him away from him. What I just don't understand is what his endgame is here." Kakashi was thinking the same thing. He watched as EHL raced after Naruto once again. Now that he'd caught on not the jump, the boy streaked up the wall in a blur of white as he tore after the boy. Naruto ran as fast as he could and attached his fingers to the roof, just before the clones switched up the gravity again. EHL slowed down as he tried his best to keep his feet connected to the wall. He eventually had to place his hands down as well as he fought against the immense pull of the bottom floor. Eventually, he began sliding down the wall as he desperately tried to simply fall to the ground. Naruto has done alright evading him so far, but what will he do when EHL finally catches him? Kakashi thought as he gazed at Naruto's strained face. He tried as hard as he could to fight against the pull of gravity, but the chakra from his fingertips just couldn't hold out against the weight. His connection failed and he began racing towards the ground. The clones immediately tried to compensate, and adjusted to gravity in another direction. As soon as the pressure lifted, EHL's eyes shot open as he continued racing up the wall. He knelt and pushed off against the wall, rocketing towards Naruto. He collided with the boy and sent him flying against the wall. Naruto's eyes widened as the wind was knocked from his chest. As he stumbled to place another density seal, EHL landed next to him and kicked him away. Instantly, he knelt down and connected himself to the floor as the clones changed the gravity to try and help the original. As Naruto sailed away, EHL launched himself again and collided with the boy mid-air. This time EHL grabbed him by the throat as they tumbled through the air towards the ceiling. Naruto gargled as he brought his hands together. EHL heard a puff of smoke behind him, and growled as a clone caught him in a headlock. He released the original and grabbed the clone by the head. He threw him forward and blasted it away with a snap of lightning. As he landed on the roof, he spied Naruto midair falling towards the ground. "It's time," Naruto thought as he reached into his pouch. Stringing wire through the center, he tossed two shuriken downwards towards a tree, whose branches were barely tipping out from the bottom of the barrier. As the shuriken sailed past, Naruto tugged on the wire, causing the shuriken to wrap around and dig into the bark. EHL felt a tug in his gut as the gravity was shifted upwards once again. "Oh, this is going to hurt like a bitch," Naruto thought as he wrapped the wire around his hand, and began falling towards the roof of the building. He cried out as the wire cut into his skin, leaving deep gashes in his palm. He grit his teeth and glanced up at EHL, who was kneeling against the roof. As they stared into each other's eyes, EHL saw something that made him pause. He didn't see any hesitation or fear. All he saw was confidence. Checkmate, Naruto smirked as he launched a kunai at the boy. EHL's eyes widened as he saw the tag attached to the kunai and leapt out of the way. As he jumped into the air, the clones around the barrier twisted their hands. EHL was flung from midair towards the right wall. Naruto grit his teeth as he held on to the wire. Before he drew too close, EHL slowed down and began sailing towards the other wall. Just like before, he slowed to a stop before colliding with the wall and began falling back towards the center. Again and again the clones adjusted the force of the gravity, until EHL floated helplessly in the center of the cube. Naruto chuckled as he watched EHL dangle midair and fought through the pain as he began crawling his way up the wire. Oh, now that's clever, Asum chuckled as tossed his cigarette on the ground and stomped it out. What did he do? He's just floating there, Ino asked. Exactly, Asuma chuckled, you see. Naruto knew he couldn't keep up with EHL's speed, so he had to immobilize him. His opponent can't make use of his jutsu if he doesn't have a surface to kick off from. He placed a hand on Ino's shoulder and pointed at the clones attached to the walls of the barrier. You see them? They are keeping the gravitational pull equivalent in every direction. That's what's keeping him suspended there. Naruto smirked as he crawled his way through the branches and sat along the trunk of the tree. After tethering himself to the tree, he stared up at EHL still suspended in midair. EHL glared down at him as he spun out of control. He reached for his pouch for a shuriken and wire, but felt his heart drop as he grasped at nothing but air. Looking for this? Naruto chuckled as he tauntingly held up EHL's pouch. When did he have time to snatch that? EHL thought. His eyes widened as he remembered the boy's clone grabbing him in a headlock. He wanted me to catch up with him. EHL thought, before gritting his teeth and sending off another blast of lightning. Naruto reached into his pouch and launched up a shuriken. The lightning curved and chased after the kunai as it began making its rotation towards the center. Like I said, checkmate. Let me sum it up for you. You can't move, you can't hit me, and you can't get down. He actually beat me, even when I was going all out, EHL sighed before lightly chuckling. The kid was something else. Well played. Very well played, Naruto Uzumaki, he called out as he and Naruto caught eyes. Very well. I concede. Ginma nodded as he raised his hand in the air. EHL Honda has forfeited the match. The winner of the first round is Naruto Uzumaki. Nicely done, Naruto, Kakashi chuckled as he watched Naruto help EHL back to the ground. And apparently I'm not the only one who thought so, he smiled as he glanced around him as the audience went wild. So this is Sasuke's teammate, Ria thought as she clapped. You certainly know how to make a first impression, she chuckled as she stared down at her brother who was going nuts. He wasn't the only one. A thunderous applause echoed across the arena, as the stands went wild. 2 rows over from her, Yoshio remained quiet as he clapped his hands. As the pink barrier dissolved into the air, his eyes focused in on the blonde-haired boy. Yoshio wasn't particularly fond of surprises, and this boy was certainly a surprise. He hadn't seen the boy when he had fought at the lumberyard, but apparently he was the one responsible for capturing the Zafu. Just what are you capable of? Oh boy, Jay sighed, before cracking his neck. Great. Now I have to pick up the slack. Thanks a lot, EHL. He rested a hand against the rail as he watched the 2 boys shake hands. The guy had done great, but he hadn't exactly shown off anything to really warrant his attention yet. Let's see if the rakeage is right about you, he thought as he leaned against the bar. Down on the field, Naruto and EHL stood across from each other as the pink barrier faded away. Congratulations, Uzumaki. I wish you the best of luck in your upcoming matches. Ah geez, don't get all cheesy on me now, Naruto chuckled as he locked his hands behind his head. Just take the compliment, EHL chuckled as he collected his clothes from the field, you have an uphill battle ahead of you. Take what you can get. Naruto nodded as he watched the boy tie his scarf back around his neck. You can count on it. Neji won't know what hit him. EHL was quiet as he buttoned up his jacket. I wasn't referring to the Hyuga. Naruto sent him a confused stare. What do you mean? EHL remained silent as he headed towards the exit, but came to a stop as he passed by him. He turned his head and whispered, I'd worry more about the Kazekage's son if I were you. Well, let's just say he's not natural. I believe you two are locked on a collision course whether you like it or not. What are you talking about? Naruto whispered back. Just keep your eyes open during his match with the Uchiha. Good luck, Naruto Uzumaki. I have a feeling you are going to need it. Without another word, EHL continued walking towards the exit of the arena. Naruto was silent as he stared at his retreating back. As he stood there, Naruto grew surprised as he started to notice something: cheering. People were cheering. For him. A smile lit up on his face as he began waving back at the crowd. Sasuke and Hinata chuckled as he began soaking it all, making kissy faces and bowing towards the audience. He gave a mock salute towards the Hokage's box, causing the old man to chuckle. "Very nice performance, my boy," the Hokage chuckled as he watched the blonde boy prance around the arena. Kitsune rolled his eyes at the boy's display, and instead focused on the Kazekage. He wanted to chalk it up to his normal Anbu paranoia, but there was something about the man that was throwing him off. The Kazekage caught sight of his glare, and simply chuckled before turning his attention back towards the arena. Team 7. You all are truly fascinating. Chapter 46, The Finals, Part 2. Show off, Sasuke jibed, watching Naruto clamber up the concrete steps to the observatory. I aim to please, Naruto chuckled as he rubbed his nose and joined his team against the railing. Honestly, what did you guys think? I think that you have a promising career in the circus ahead of you, if that whole Hokage thing doesn't pan out, Sasuke sneered. Bite me, Naruto growled before gasping and rubbing his hip. Are you alright? Hinata asked, leaning back. Naruto nodded and winced as he massaged the tender region. To be honest, EHL's hits had been a lot more devastating than he had imagined. Even with his density seals, the force behind each punch had managed to leave a severe impact on him. As he nursed his wounds, he noticed Hinata approaching him with her hands glowing and he quickly waved her away. Don't even think about it, he chuckled as he stepped back. But you're hurt, she chided as she tried to draw closer. Yeah, but this is still a competition. A competition that you are a part of. Listen, I appreciate the thought, Hinata-chan, but you still have 3 rounds ahead of you. Save your chakra to heal yourself if you have to. Hinata stopped and frowned at him as he hid behind Shikamaru. Don't drag me into this, he droned, before staring at the white-eyed girl. It's not often I say this, but Naruto's right. It may not be very Konoha-like, but this is one instance where we're supposed to look out for ourselves. Save your energy for your own matches. Hinata was quiet as she considered his words, before the light surrounding her hands faded away. Fine. You're right, she sighed. Good, Shikamaru replied as Hinata returned to her spot against the rail. Thanks Shikamaru, Naruto chirped over his shoulder. Don't sweat it. Now get off me, he groaned as he violently shrugged the smaller boy off him. Well, look who it is. Kiba smirked as the group of genin turned around to see EHL making his way down the stairs towards their row. As Kiba opened his mouth to taunt the boy, EHL simply glared at him as a small streak of electricity danced across his face. Kiba wisely chose not to retort, and simply gulped before quickly turning back to face the field. Apologize sensei for my poor display, EHL droned as he bowed to the man sitting to the right of Guy and Kakashi. The man softly smiled and simply ruffled the boy's hair, which he knew annoyed him to no end. You have nothing to apologize for. It was a splendid match that served to showcase both of your skills. You should be proud. Indeed. Your techniques and actions burned with youthful vigor. Guy boomed, causing Kakashi to wince in embarrassment. EHL seemed unbothered by the man's loud outburst and simply bowed in acknowledgement of his praise. He then made his way through the aisle and took a seat next to his teammate. Nicely done, EHL, Ko commented as EHL placed his feet on the chair in front of him. Was his only response as he leaned back into his seat. So edgy, the genin's sweat dropped as they watched him lift his scarf to cover his mouth. Kiba was the first to break his trance as he noticed Sakura making her way onto the field alongside Neji. Hey, there they go. Come on Sakura. Kick his arrogant ass. Kiba shouted, before quickly being smacked in the back of the head by Kurenai. Kiba. We are in public and you are representing your team. Please show some more class, she chided, her naturally red eyes accenting her glare. Clear as crystal, he muttered as Akamaru barked at him as well. I kinda feel bad for Sakura, Chuji said as he popped open another bag of chips. What do you mean? Ino asked. It just kinda sucks that she was paired off with a Hyuga for the first round, he replied as he began chowing down. That Byakugan of theirs makes her genjutsu kinda useless. On top of that, she's gotten better in taijutsu, but I don't see her beating that Juken thingy. That's dojutsu for you, Kiba growled as the memories of his match with Neji painfully came to mind. Honestly, even though he truly wanted her to win, there was a part of him deep down that already knew she probably wouldn't be able to. Sakura had certainly grown the most since they became a team, and, although his alpha male ego loathed admitting it, he knew that Sakura was probably the strongest of their team. She certainly deserved the promotion, but, like Tenten in the preliminaries, she had been dealt a bad hand. Having a dojutsu does not guarantee a victory, EHL muttered, catching their attention. The idea that they are somehow superior is one of their greatest assets and liabilities. By believing that they are better than you, you have already given up the possibility of winning. However, this intimidation is a double-sided coin, for this leads to an inflation of pride. He paused, peeking open an eye to stare at them. All techniques have a weakness, even Kekai Genkai. If you believe that just because she is a genjutsu wielder that she will lose, then you are a fool. Kiba growled at the insult, but stopped as he was filled with light shame. Had he really given up on the possibility of her winning just because he had lost? He grit his teeth as he stared down at the arena. Come on, Sakura. You got this. The crowd was full of excitement from the last match, as they watched the next set of competitors take their place. Are both competitors ready? Ginma asked, glancing between the two. I am, Neji coldly replied. Sakura remained silent and simply nodded her head. Well, if both competitors are ready, then you may begin, Ginma called with a wave of his hand. Neither genin moved as the proctor leapt away. The two stood motionless, observing the other as the crowd cheered in the background. Sakura wanted to squirm under the boy's unsettling, white eyes, but she stood her ground and stared right back. After a minute of silence, Neji finally spoke. I would offer the chance for you to simply surrender, but I can tell you won't back down without a fight. Sakura held her tongue as she continued to stand still. You have that same defiant look, you know. He called out, confusing her. Neji nodded his head towards the observatory, where the bright spot of blonde hair was easily visible. Your eyes hold that same spark as that idiot's. You just don't know when to back down when fate has given a poor hand. He didn't even flinch under her intense glare. However, unlike him, you're no fool. You actually have a brain between your shoulders. You're the type that, given enough time, can outmaneuver almost anyone, and you have had plenty of it. She twitched as he smoothly slid into the signature form of the Juken. So, let's see what you have come up with to overcome this handicap. He smirked as his eyes hardened and the veins around his eyes became painfully visible. She glanced one time into the stands and spied Kurenai sitting next to Asuma, before taking a deep breath. Here I go. No sooner had her hand twitched towards her kunai pouch, Neji shot off like a rocket. She quickly grasped 3 kunai and launched them at the approaching genin, as she leapt back. Neji easily dodged the barrage and vaulted over them. Sakura was shocked as she watched him effortlessly reach out and snatch one out of the air. Neji landed and came at her with a ferocity even Kiba couldn't keep up with. Her eyes widened as she tried to her best to evade the path of the blade. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes as he watched Neji chase Sakura around the field. Naruto glanced to his right and noticed the boy's expression. Something wrong, Shikamaru? Something's not right. She's acting as if she's almost afraid of the kunai. No shit, Naruto deadpanned. Gee, I wonder why she doesn't want to get cut by a knife. He's right, Sasuke chimed in without looking away from the match. Ha! Sakura has come a long way since we left the academy. Maybe she's not grown as much as you three, but she has certainly worked hard to improve herself, Shikamaru said, glancing at Team 7. She is a kunoichi, and wouldn't be frightened just by the possibility of being cut by a kunai. Neji may be a pain, but he's not going to kill her. There's something else going on. Sakura grunted as she tried her best to parry the onslaught of strikes. Plan A, she thought as she began reaching into her pouch. However, her actions did not escape Neji's notice. His Byakugan spied through her body and zoomed in on her pouch. A flashbang, he thought as he watched her grab hold of the tiny ball. His lip curled up as the pieces fit together. Not a bad idea, he thought, as he got ready to leap away. Before he could, she did something he never expected she would. She kicked off towards him. She clenched her eyes shut as she thrust the tiny ball into their faces, which promptly went off. Both genin cried out, as the senses were suddenly overloaded with light and sound. Even with their eyes closed, at that close distance, their eyes were still incredibly stumbled away, grasping their ears as they tried to drive out the whining sound. Got to focus. Got to get him while he's distracted. Sakura thought as she clasped her hands together. Neji grit his teeth as he tried to put as much distance between them as he could. Thankfully, he had deactivated his Byakugan before the flash bang went off, but he was still temporarily blinded. He stumbled as he felt something begin wrapping around his body, before he felt chains tighten his arms to his sides. His head swiveled to his right as he began feeling a tugging sensation on the chain. Sakura rubbed her eyes as her vision began to return to her. Things had been incredibly blurry, but she could still make out Neji's face. She quickly flexed her wrist, palming 4 senbon from her sleeve. As she was about to launch them, she froze as a smile crept along Neji's face. Very good. You're trying to stop me from using my Byakugan so you can entrap me in your genjutsu. It was a nice try, but there is one thing that you of all people should understand. She didn't like where this was going. She froze as he turned around and faced her. As you can guess, the Juken requires a high level of chakra control. Even without my eyes, I can sense your genjutsu. His arms pushed up and sailed straight through the chains, which melted away into mist. She napped out of her daze and began raining senbon at him. She was stunned as he somehow dodged every needle she sent flying his way. Her eyes shot open as she finally noticed the veins reappearing along his eyes. Can he still see even with his eyes closed? Well, can he? Naruto asked, leaning towards Hinata. Technically, yes he can. His eyelids are just skin, and the Byakugan can easily pierce through them. While it may be a little blurry for him, he should not be hampered too much. Naruto sighed, causing some surprise from his teammates. Well, there goes one of my ideas, he weakly chuckled before turning his attention back to the match. As he made his way towards the edge of the field, Neji continued blocked the senbon with the kunai he had stolen earlier. He quickly retreated behind the burnt bark of one of the trees EHL had blasted in the earlier match. I need to let my eyes heal as long as I can. Prolonging this match will give my eyes more time to adjust before my other matches, he thought as he leaned against the tree. As he gripped the handle of the kunai, he was lightly startled as he felt something drip across his fingers. He gazed down at the kunai and was surprised as he began inspecting the blade. He ran a finger along the edge and was fascinated to find a strange gel lacing the metal. Poison. So that's why she had seemed so uncomfortable at the beginning of the match, he contemplated as he inspected the kunai. So that's her plan. She wants to disrupt my chakra system so I can't activate my Byakugan. As he got caught in his thoughts, he was not unaware of the dark shape quickly racing towards him behind the tree. Well, two can play at that game, he thought with a smirk as he started running through hand seals. Sakura leapt over the top of the tree, senbon clenched in both hands ready to pepper her opponent. As she sailed over the burnt branches, she was shocked to find him missing. She landed with a thud and quickly spun around, eyeing the surrounding area. Where could he have gone? Kiba felt his heart sink as he watched a dark shadow begin to grow from the base of the tree. As much as he wanted to shout out a warning, his voice would never be heard over the roar of the crowd. He could only watch in silence, as Neji began emerging out of the bark of the tree. Sakura froze as she suddenly felt the invading chakra in her system. He placed me in a genjutsu, she internally cried out as she quickly sent a pulse through her body. Even as she began to turn around, she knew it was too late. Neji lashed out and his fingers dashed along her arm, causing the muscle to violently condense. She let out a muffled scream as the tenketsu in her arm were shut tight. Neji reached out with a backhand slash with the kunai, which she barely dodged out of the way. As she leaned out of the way, he kicked off and planted a knee in her chest. She stumbled back and felt her back slam against the wall. As she opened her eyes, her world froze as she saw him inches away from disabling her other arm. Plan B. Neji was already in motion as he prepared to disable her other arm when he noticed it, chakra building up in her throat. His eyes widened as her cheeks began to bulge, but it was too late to halt his momentum. She exhaled, blowing a massive cloud of purple smoke from her lungs. He collided into her, banging their skulls together. He desperately tried to leap away, but the damage was already done. He grit his teeth as he violently coughed and tried to rub whatever was burning his eyes away. More poison. No wonder she's been so quiet the whole match. Sakura raised her good arm to her head and tried to stop the aching pain from their collision. Even so, she grinned as she watched Neji violently wheeze from the gas. Even without his Byakugan, he could still dispel genjutsu due to his incredible chakra control. So, she had searched for a way to somehow disrupt his chakra network, and she had come up with one of the most ancient of kunoichi traditions, poison. Knowing it was now or never, she raised her one good arm and tried to form hand seals, but froze as a realization washed over her. Nothing was happening. Even if she could still move it, he had gotten her other arm. For the first time in this match, she didn't have a plan. The poison may have disrupted his chakra, but he would still be able to function on a moderate level. She may have been getting better, but she was not on his level in taijutsu, even with him incapacitated. What do I do? What do I do? She desperately thought as she glanced into the crowd. Even from here, she could make out her sensei's signature, red-sleeved dress and Kiba's hoodie with Akamaru perched on top. No! I've come this far. I am not going to lose here. She grit her teeth as she unconsciously began molding chakra. I can do this, and I will. Neji let out another violent cough as his body desperately tried to remove the toxic chemical from his lungs. However, it was too late. He could already feel the effects of the poison creeping through his system, hindering his ability to mold chakra. Got to focus. I must keep my Byakugan active. As he desperately tried to cling to as much control as he could, he felt his body grow cold as a shadowy presence flooded over him. He turned around to see Sakura bent over with her hair billowing in the wind. His eyes widened as a massive, ink-like blot appeared behind the girl. He felt his heartbeat begin to rise as a massive hand shoot up from the hole and begin pushing off from the ground, dragging an unholy creature behind it. Ugh! You guys can see that, right? Naruto asked as he and the other viewers stood in silence, gazing at the massive creature that towered behind Sakura. He certainly wasn't alone. The audience let out surprised gasps as bright yellow eyes shot open, and the massive caricature of the girl smashed its fists together. It isn't real. It's only an illusion. Neji thought as he grit his teeth, trying to get his body under control, but no matter how hard he tried, his chakra was fluctuating too much. Fine then, he growled as the creature lumbered towards him. It sluggishly raised its head and began rushing towards him. Neji rose to his feet and began jogging towards the behemoth. As he continued along his path, inner Sakura swung its massive fist. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to dodge the incoming blow, but he forced himself to ignore his brain. Push! Through! Not stopping for an instant, he launched himself straight through the illusion. Even though his body felt no force from the creature, his brain still recognized the impact. The nerves along his body lit up in pain, but he clenched his teeth and powered through it. As he emerged on the other side, Sakura was shocked. In her tired state, she attempted to throw a kick at him. Neji shoved her leg aside and clenched his fist. With his chakra control out of whack, he may not have been able to use the Juken, but he hadn't trained under Konoha's foremost taijutsu expert for over a year without learning anything. He smashed 2 hits into her limp arm, causing her to scream out in pain. Ducking to the ground, he twisted and kicked out her legs from under her. As she dropped to the ground, he planted a knee on her back and grabbed hold of her functional arm. Without a moment's hesitation, he yanked and twisted it out of her socket. The crowd winced as Sakura cries echoed across the stadium. 10 feet away from them, inner Sakura stumbled as tried to turn around, but could only moan as it began fading away. Neji pressed her face into the dirt as he bent her arm even further back. Submit. Now, she tried. She really did. But she could not stop the stream of tears from falling down her face as he increased the pressure on her arm. I'm sorry Kiba, Akamaru. She nodded her head and cried out, I forfeit. Ginma sighed and raised his arm. Winner, Neji Hyuga. The audience let out a weak applause as they watched Sakura carted out of the stadium. Too bad, Shikamaru sighed. She put up a great fight. It was just a poor matchup, Temari commented as she stood next to him. Agreed. She put a good amount of thought into the fight, but in the end, he was just too much for her. Naruto remained silent as he watched Sakura disappear down the tunnel. He glared as he stared down at Neji. He was getting sick and tired of this guy beating up on his friends. He carefully glanced to the side, and shot Hinata a look. Naruto may not have been the most observant person when it came to social interactions, but even he could tell that Neji placed his cousin on edge. It was subtle, but he would always pick up on the way she would twitch if Neji glanced in her direction. He was sick of it. Why does he get to be treated by the medical ninja? Ino cried as they watched Neji walked out of the arena. They have to make sure the poison isn't lethal. While killing isn't forbidden in the exams, it is heavily frowned upon. If we can take any chances to prevent it, we do, Asuma replied trying to soothe her. He glanced next to him at Kurenai, who had not said anything since the end of the match. I'm sorry. You shouldn't be, she replied with a light smile. Asuma was surprised by the twinkle in her eye as she turned to look at him. Even though she lost, I have never been prouder. Did you see what she did? She manifested a genjutsu so powerful that everyone in the crowd felt it, and she did it without hand signs. Asuma chuckled at the pride in her voice. The kid had talent, he wouldn't deny that. Kiba sighed as he leaned back into his chair. Damn it. She was so close too, he grumbled as Akamaru whimpered. That's the Hyuga for you, Chuji commented as he patted Kiba's shoulder. Now, I almost feel bad for that other guy from Kumo that has to face Hinata. A loud chuckle caught his attention, as KO's face lit up in a smile. Oh, I wouldn't be too sure about that. If anything, I'd be more worried about the Hyuga, EHL muttered from the end of the aisle. And why is that? Ino asked, leaning over Chuji. Ko and EHL looked back at their sensei, who nodded, allowing them to proceed. Well, as you saw from his match, EHL here specializes in taijutsu and ninjutsu. With my summons, I'm our tracking and interrogation expert. Rounding out our group is Jay, who just so happens to be a genjutsu specialist. That's too bad. Now I do feel bad for the guy, Chuji murmured, before snacking down again. You'll be surprised, Akimichi, the sensei thought to himself as he leaned back in his chair. In all honesty, while EHL was without a doubt the heavy hitter of their little group, Jay was certainly the more deadly. The man had a smile on his face as he gazed down at his light blonde-haired student, who was lazily leaning against the rail of the platform. The boy only seemed to be focused on his art and women, but, when he got serious, even he had a tough time keeping track of him. Oh yes. He was certainly the most dangerous of the three of them. Especially, for a Hyuga. That's it for part 11. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.